I think that the first 6 to 9 months of this year, you're going to see a weak US economy. You're going to see there are green shoots of recovery showing in Europe. I'm not convinced they're anything more than a flash in the pan. Everybody is talking about peace, 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 without questioning what is Russia going to give in return. And the sense that I get is that Russia is going to be very robust in whatever is agreed. And I think that it's going to be difficult for Trump to bridge a gap. Basically, Russia will not accept a ceasefire. So the longer the war goes on, the greater the territory Russia will obtain. The biggest issue that Russia wants security over is the future security of Russia. So many times, going back to World War I and World War II, Europe has invaded Russia and has been turned back every time. And I think that if an agreement is reached, it's not just an agreement over Ukraine, it's an agreement over the future of Eurasia. And from that will fall out Ukraine. What Russia, I'm sure, does not want is a boundary line drawn along the Dnieper River, because it won't be so long that America will have hypersonic technology or the equivalent. And therefore, if the boundary line is the Dnieper River, it's not going to give Russia's radar systems enough warning. So really, one way or another, Russia wants control over the whole of Ukraine for security reasons. The second problem is that they are not going to accept as contingents of military to police whatever border is drawn up any EU country or any member country of NATO. That they won't accept. They've had too much bad experiences of trusting the West. All I'm trying to say is that the odds are that these negotiations over Ukraine are going to take months to conclude, if not longer. That happens, then some of the recovery that we've been seeing in Europe in terms of equity markets and a little bit pick up in PMIs, etc., are going to reverse again. If we go eastwards, I am confident, and I think that their economy is going to surprise everybody on the upside this year, on condition that America does not go overboard in trying to contain China and doing their best to disrupt their economy. That is a risk, but I think at the moment I would go for good growth in China, certainly over the next 6 to 9 months. The State Department has issued a new statement about Taiwan. The previous one was in September 2022, and in that statement there was an explicit phrase saying that there will be no support for an independent Taiwan. In this new statement, that phrase has been cut out. China is up in arms about it. I think we need to watch this space very carefully. There are some of my friends who say that actually what Trump is after is doing a mega deal with China. Two of the most powerful countries come together and we can make music, as it were. Others point to the hawks in Washington over China, and you're seeing renewed sanctions, tariffs, etc., on specific products such as semiconductors and tech stuff and chips and so on and so forth. However, I balance that out with Marco Rubio. Before becoming Secretary of State, his team produced one of the best reports on China I have ever read. And the bottom line really was, you mess with us and we can mess with you. China has stated, we're not selling you guys any critical minerals. That has a huge impact on the industrial military complex and on industry and on the tech sector. Where are they going to get their key products? We have weak to flat business activity in America in the first 6 to 9 months. We have a bit of a pickup in physical copper consumption in Europe at the moment, but it could easily be a flash in the pan. Certainly, industry people that I've spoken to are not convinced that this is for real. It's very likely in our work that between now and September, we're going to see a big correction in US and global equity markets, and that will cause weakness in copper and all the base metal. What changes it around? By then, Trump will be able to introduce his tax cuts, get deregulation off the ground. And with a weak economy, you'll find that the Fed will be cutting interest rates. The dollar, under these conditions, will start a multi-year fall, all bullish for copper. What follows from that is not pleasant. The basic reason is that this will be a highly inflationary period, reminiscent of what we saw in the 1970s and early 1980s, with the US CPI jumping to around 13%, as we saw in 1980. What does that mean for 10-year US Treasuries? Not 4 or 5%, but at least 13. And what does that do to a highly leveraged system? The fact that every man and his dog and every investment bank is calling for higher and higher gold prices, common sense rather tells me we're going to have a correction. But corrections should all be bought. I think for a long period of time, the East has been draining West of its gold resources. So on our work, China's citizens and institutions own approximately 25,000 tons of gold. The government, through different ministries, including the PLA, own more or less the same. Don't forget that whatever the PLA imports is not recorded in customs. Russia also has much more than is reported, with the bulk of their 12,000 tons that we know of, it's probably higher than that by now, is owned by a company closely aligned to Russia's central bank. China has long indicated that it will make a statement one day that its currency is supported by the gold that its citizens own. That will ruffle a lot of feathers. What is Doge doing? It's cutting employment in big numbers. You look at the revisions that the BLS will be making and has made. The employment situation in America actually does not look robust. And then on top of that, you've got the migrant deportations. There's huge numbers. The government's been paying them. And if you look at the recent employment data, I think this came out of an analysis that Doge did. I can't remember how many millions of guys reportedly aged 100, even up to 200, are receiving payouts. The published CPI number, putting it bluntly, is a load of trash. Result of the elections told you that, because why were households switching from voting Democrats to Republicans? They could see in their daily house bills what inflation really was. The guy that I follow on this, John Williams of Shadow Government Stats, takes all the government's manipulations of CPI back to before Arthur Burns in the 1970s started it. And what's real inflation? Last year, 10.8%. So when you look at retail sales, just adjust nominal retail sales into real retail sales using the official CPI last year of 3%. Retail sales went nowhere in volume terms. But think, even adjusting it CPI to 4%, and that's whatever it is, it's 1/3 of the economy. I would go for copper, but I would not invest long term. I would only be investing, trading for 2 to 3 years. So if you have a mine, if you have a resource that you think needs to start being developed post 2028, that's going to be a great time to do it, because the world will be in a mess. Your input costs will fall dramatically. And then what emerges out of that is the next 20, 30-year boom. As I keep coming up, what is demand going? What's physical consumption going to do? You've got regular items like substitution. When you get prices certainly over 10,000, and probably where we are now, there's a great move to switch to ALI. And in data centers, where you've got the huge boom going on from investors, fiber optics are penetrating that market. And from reports that I've read by people who actually design data centers, fiber optics is going to increase their penetration of the market. EV cars, very few people are mentioning that actually the biggest car harness maker in the world, SMI in Japan, has publicly said to an industry audience 2 years ago, 40% of all wiring in EVs will be aluminium. Then, just to take it a stage further, in the aircon industry, which is a big consumer of copper, the biggest aircon maker, which is a Japanese company, said again 2 years ago, based on years of research, we are switching all our copper tubing to aluminium. If you go back to the 70s and 80s, when Volkswagen started switching from copper car radiators to aluminium, it took about 5 years before it became a huge number.